Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's great. We have the listeners once again doing our jobs for us, laying out a show full of questions, really good questions. Stuff there were a couple on here. There was one that we were discussing when we recorded the last show. Like, I thought, wow, that is an incredible question. I don't know. I didn't feel like I had a great answer for it. And you're like, oh, I've got three good answers. So I was like, oh, good. Well, now I don't feel any less stupid. Good. Thank you.
Well, in the time since then, I'm trying to remember what my second one. Okay, I remember now. I've got it. I just don't want to lose it before we get to it. But yes, more listener questions, and we're still not going to get through all of these. But there's some really interesting stuff, and I think we'll hit on some here in this show for sure. So enough of the dilly-dallying, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get started.
Let's get started. All right. First one from @Stewart_E4USVet. If Ryan Day is standing on third, which coaching hire will be the one to bring him home? Tony, we're going to say it on three. Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Jim Knowles.
Jim Knowles.
Yes. Good job. All right. Fantastic. Yes. The offense has been national championship caliber every single year that Ryan Day has been at Ohio State, pretty much. And when they have had, implosions, it has been on the defensive side of the ball. They had a national championship caliber offense in 2020, and then the defense let them down. They had a national championship caliber offense in 2021, and the defense let them down. If they're going to be a national championship team, if Brian Day is going to get knocked home, it is going to be by the defense, and it will be because Jim Knowles has, modernized and updated. And you want to go back and listen to the morning scoop show that I did with Ross Fulton on Thursday this week, where, we talked about the Rose Bowl and like some of the stuff that Ohio State did in the Rose Bowl that you just kept seeing all year that was so frustrating from Ohio State. And it's like, is that going to be a concern next year with Jim Knowles? And the answer was like, nope, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Like, it seems like a lot of the frustrating stuff you've seen with the defense all year should potentially be talked about in the past tense by the time we get to next football season. And if it doesn't have to be a number one in the nation defense, they don't need to have the 2021 Georgia defense. They just need to have a pretty good defense, and then the offense can do the rest. You just can't have the defense losing games for you.
Well, Tom, here's what I'm thinking. If Ryan Day was born on third, what if they pinch run for him and that pinch runner, say Jim Knowles, ends up stealing home, and then you've got Ryan Day celebrating like he's the one who hit. Not only did he not hit a home run, he was put on third and then taken off third. Jim Knowles steals home, and you've got Ryan Day celebrating like he's the one that did it. I mean, come on, give me a break.
This metaphor is getting a little more complicated. And, do we want to go, maybe Ryan Day, the ultimate insult, I think, is not just that you were born on third, but you're the guy who, who is the runner on second base in extra innings when they're, you just get to walk out there for nothing. You weren't even born there. It's like, no, please take this thing. Like, I feel that like that's even more of an insult, maybe potentially. So, Jim Harbaugh, maybe think about working that into your repertoire in the future.
Did you ever play with Ghost Men?
What was I, a child with fewer than 9 siblings? Yes, I was.
Just make sure. I wonder how many people out there have any idea what we're talking about with Ghost Men. Ghost Man on second, Ghost Man on third, Ghost Man on first, or whatever. I don't know that people play baseball anymore with like the 8 neighborhood kids anymore.
Yes, we called them Ghost Runners, but that's just one more of the fun, whimsical differences between growing up in Northwest Ohio and growing up in the Northeast. So, yes, otherwise exact same childhood. Next one. This is the one that I read, and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going to say for this one. I had come up with an answer. It was like, oh, okay, that's a good one. But you immediately had like 3 answers. So then I felt some shame. So I'll let you go first. From @OSU Buckeye Shane, I think an unpopular take on something in Ohio State history would be interesting. Tony, what is your unpopular take on something in Ohio State football history?
Well, I'll start with my first one. Archie Griffin winning his second Heisman based on the season he had.
Yeah.
Kind of iffy. And if people don't know, he rushed for 1,450 yards in 12 games, scored 4 touchdowns. Pete Johnson, the fullback, was the touchdown vulture that year. I think he led the nation with like 26 or 28 touchdowns. But Archie Griffin was sixth in the nation in rushing, behind Ricky Bell at USC, rushed for 1,957 yards. Tony Dorsett rushed for 1,686 yards that year. Chuck Muncie rushed for more yards, 10 more yards. But I remember the first time I ever saw that, because you'd grow up, oh, Archie Griffin, the greatest, and 33 games with 100 yards rushing in a row, and two-time Heisman winner, and it's like you can't even question it. And then you look, you're like 1,450 yards and 4 touchdowns, and that wins the Heisman. But even back then, obviously, notoriety helped. But there is also, I'm not gonna say that when when you see like the best player in the nation, like I feel like this is the best player in the nation, and maybe that's just the way people felt about him, and that's fine. I just think I was pretty shocked, a little disappointed, a little unimpressed the first time I ever saw those stats. Similar to the first time I ever saw Joe Namath's stats, NFL stats.
The most overrated player in football history, not college, not NFL, the most overrated player in football history.
If you've never looked, go look, because it is wow. Like, are you sure you're not a Glennon? Are you one of the Glennon brothers? Are you Grandpa Glennon? Like the numbers there. Ugh.
Yeah, Joe Namath's entire legacy is based around winning Super Bowl III and guaranteeing victory, which, congratulations. You sat around a pool without a shirt on, and a very, very young Brent Musburger wrote something down. And then Matt Snell did all the work in the Super Bowl, and you somehow got voted MVP for some reason. And that's literally the only thing you did in your career. But yeah, sure. NFL Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Like literally the second most impressive thing he did on a football field was hit on Susie Colbert. That's it. Like, and then just stood around in a mink coat on the sideline of Shea Stadium a bunch with a terrible muddy field. Like, great. That was what a legacy. Great job, Joe Namath. Let's see. I've got 2. So I'm going to say, and this is a little bit along your lines, like Ohio State claim, like you can jump on Alabama for all sorts of just absolutely garbage national championships you want to claim. Like they're the worst at it, but Ohio State claiming like 1970, like, come on, like, yes, that was a great team. Yes, it was probably the best team in the nation. It's a darn shame you lost to Jim Plunkett and Stanford in the Super Bowl in the Rose Bowl, but you sure did. So probably time to take that one down. And there's another one, I think 1961. There's another one that's kind of creaky too, but yeah, the 1971. And like, yes, I'm aware of the history, and they used to do the polls before the bowl games and yada, yada, yada. But like, if you lose a game, if you lose your champion, you lose your last game of the season, you probably shouldn't be the national champion. So consider not losing the Rose Bowl next time. That's my free advice to you.
When Ohio State won it in 2002, I don't ever remember there being any mention of 1970. It was always 1968.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time Ohio State won a national championship. I don't know what year it was that Ohio State won the title in 1970. I know the season was 1970, but I don't know what year it was that they won it in 1970. Was it, say, I don't know, like 2006, or was it 2009? When did they decide that they won the national title in 1970? Because it wasn't in 1970.
They did. It was like the National Football Foundation. And I think if you go through the lobby, they've had the lobby in the Woody Hayes closed for a while, but I think if you go through the lobby, there is a trophy in there somewhere for it, but it's like, it's not.
They never acknowledged it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like there's, the banners inside the Woody, it's up there. It's like, yeah, yes, but also no, and more no than yes. And, if you take that down, then you can make fun of Alabama, who has about 13 of those. Like, I forget how many national championship Alabama claimed. It's like 20 something. And it's like, yeah, but I've been about 9 of those are legit, like really legit. There's a bunch of like, Tuscaloosa Towing Company national champions, 1912. Like Tuscaloosa Towing Company, they issued a national. Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you take that one down, you can make fun of Alabama for about 15 of them. So that seems like a pretty good trade to me. What's your next one?
Here's one that I've had for a long time, since the day of the game. I think Joe Germain was more responsible for the 1997 loss to Michigan than Stanley Jackson. And I know what you're saying. Stanley Jackson threw 2 interceptions, one right to Andre Weathers.
which led directly to 7 points the other direction. Yeah, go on.
But and Joe Germain did throw a 56-yard touchdown pass to David Boston. But when you look at like Joe Germain, 5 of 17 for 84 yards, sacked 5 times. Stanley Jackson, 4 of 9 for 49 yards, 2 interceptions. Say what you want about those. I think interceptions are overrated. Sacked 0 times. Stanley Jackson rushed for like 13 yards in that game. Joe Germain rushed for negative 32. Joe Germain was terrible that game. And even, did he have much time? No. But did he, like, he was not, he didn't step up. He didn't, and I shouldn't be saying this because I'm planning to try to talk to him about Devin Brown here eventually. So maybe don't put this out there. But and again, it is an unpopular opinion. I understand that. And it's one that I've had since 1997. And I don't know how many of my opinions from 1997 still hold true today. Like, as you grow older and as you mature, do you still hold the same positions you did when you were a college kid? Because if you do, are you sure that's the right spot? Are you sure maybe you shouldn't be reconsidering that? But that's just one of those that I have. It's not a game I'm going to go and rewatch, but this is just one of these things. I'm answering the question. All right, Tom, I'm just answering the question. This is something that I was like going through the memory banks, and I have another one that will probably anger people even more, but that's just where I am on that one. And as soon as I said it, Tom, I could see like, what? So
yeah, that was one, like, boy, I would have completely accepted the Ohio State offensive line lost that game more than Stanley Jackson. I would have completely accepted that. That was a Lloyd Carr Michigan team which threw the ball grudgingly, if at all. Brian Griese was the starting quarterback. 14 for 25, 147 yards, 0 touchdowns. For Michigan on the ground, 42 rushes for 42 yards, averaged 1 yard per carry on the ground, 14 for 25 for 147 yards through the air, and they won. Ohio State had 13 first downs. Michigan had 12. I was there for that game. That game was that was such a bad game. Like, it was two good teams, but just like, just such a rock fight. And that was one of those few games where that broke the stat that I love to cite, where the team that rushes for more yards per carry always wins the game. Well, that game, Ohio State rushed for 2.9 yards per carry to Michigan's 1 and lost the game. But man, that was, I'm not sure I'm willing to put that on Joe Germain. I think that was an awful lot of Ohio State's offensive line couldn't really block anyone, and that made for a very, very bad game.
Well, and as I'm looking at this, I'm reevaluating my position, because if you just don't turn the ball over, you win.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you
don't
did
nothing. They had a punt return touchdown, and if you just throw incompletions, you win. Just run the ball and throw incompletions. So I'm going to have to revise my original unpopular statement. I'll do it. I'm not too proud. I think we all know that. Like, I'm okay admitting when I was wrong, but that was stupid 21-year-old me. I was an idiot back then. Mm-hmm. I can recognize my errors now.
Here's Michigan's drives in that game. I'm just going to read down. This is just Michigan's drives. 3 plays, 2 yards. 3 plays, 5 yards. 3 plays, 8 yards. 5 plays, 0 yards. 4 drives into the game, they have 15 yards of total offense. 8 plays, 35 yards. 7 plays, 62 yards. They scored a touchdown on that one. Then they had scored a touchdown on the that would have been the punt return, was the second one. 5 plays, 14 yards. 3 plays, 0 yards. Then the interception return. 6 plays, -1 yards. 7 plays, 32 yards. 3 plays, -3 yards. 6 plays, 5 yards. 3 plays, 4 yards. 3 plays, 3 yards. 2 plays, -5 yards. Game over. Michigan had no drives. They had 1 drive longer than 35 yards in the entire game. They had 3 drives longer than 14 yards in the entire game. They had 4 drives longer than 8 yards in the entire game, and they won.
I hope people didn't stop listening once I said this. They've stuck around to hear me recant, because, wow.
that was a trestle ball rock fight that Ohio State lost. Like, when Jim Tressel had a million of those, and it was like, but they won them all, so it was okay. Like, oh, that was not great. Certainly not a national championship team, I can tell you that. Here's my next one. Behind Michigan, everyone views Penn State as the team that is Ohio State's greatest rival, challenge, threat, danger, whatever you want to call it. I would submit that over the last, since the time that Penn State joined the conference, Michigan State and Purdue have been significantly bigger threats to Ohio State than Penn State. Penn State, they play close games against Penn State, but they always win the games against Penn State. Michigan State and Purdue ruin so many more seasons than Penn State does. It's just, here's Penn State's seasons that they've ruined. 2016, they knocked Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game. 2011, that season was pretty much pre-ruined. 2008, okay, they got Ohio State in 2008. 2005, okay, but and then you're back to like 2001, and 1999 was a ruined season. Like, you're basically going back to the 90s to get more than like a couple games. Michigan State, 3 years, 2015, 2013, they did 2 out of 3 years. They ruined Ohio State seasons. They then obviously 1998. You are all familiar with the work of 1998 Michigan State. Purdue, 2018 kept Ohio State out of the playoff. 2009 kept Ohio State out of potentially a national championship kind of scenario. 2000 kept Ohio State out of the Rose Bowl. Like, I mean, and they play Purdue a heck of a lot less than they play Penn State. Like, Purdue and Michigan State ruin like significantly good Ohio State seasons a lot more than Penn State does.
Well, and you say Penn State ruined the 2016 season. The Buckeyes still made the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, so, they didn't win the Big Ten.
But it's like even when they beat them, it's still like,
yeah.
These other programs have really, like, 2013 and 2015 Michigan State is, I mean, two devastating losses, and I still think they rank third to the 1998 loss, and those three maybe top anything else other than, I don't know, the 96 Ty Streets touchdown.
Yeah, and you could really make an argument. Like, I mean, Penn State didn't keep Ohio State out of the playoff in 2016. 2008, they had already gotten clobbered by USC, so they were not going to win the national championship that year, and then that loss didn't keep them out of the Rose Bowl or out of the Big Ten championship. Winning their share of the Big Ten championship.
2005, they lost to Texas.
2005, they lost to Texas, but and they're they're probably not in the national championship that year either. So yeah, I mean, 2001, they had already lost a game to UCLA, maybe more. 1999, they had they were well on their way, circling down the drain at that point. So 97, I mean, is 97 the last time Penn State really kind of ruined? And even then, Ohio State went into Ann Arbor, win, and you're in the Rose Bowl. So
that was a 2-3 in 97, maybe.
It sounds right-ish. I mean, and 1994, they basically ruined the 1994 season, but just by sheer volume of points. But that's definitely the game that sticks out the most of 1994 season, other than the Michigan game, probably. But yeah, I think you could make a very, very, very strong case that Purdue and Michigan State are both significantly bigger ruiners of great Ohio State seasons than Penn State is.
So my last one here, and I don't know, we'll see how unpopular it is. I know, like, I don't know if this is ageist, but Rex Kern and all of those guys, Rex Kern, one of the greatest quarterbacks in Ohio State history, would be like a Division III quarterback in today's game. Like, would be a defensive back, like would not be able to play at Ohio State. And so I can't really, how do you, I have trouble ranking those guys, a lot of them, when they're playing against defensive lines that are, 205 pounds, when your center can move to corner or safety the next year. Like, it's a very different sport. I will say, I think Chick Harley could play in today's game. Like, when these crazy athletic guys, like, but I just think quarterback specifically is maybe not something that translates to today's game unless you're playing at Air Force or Army or Navy. So that's I know people, obviously the older generation, I never watched Rex Kern, but I know the older generation will tell you he's the best of all time at Ohio State. And so I know me having these opinions that I've had for years about, and it's not even him, it's just the era where they don't necessarily translate.
Well, I mean, that's true of anything. I mean, I think you put Mickey Mantle in baseball today with pitchers throwing 104 and, sliders and splitters and pitch tunneling. And I mean, like Mickey Mantle's hitting about 150 in today's baseball. And, but that's true of everyone. I mean, that's true. Go take Bob Cousy, and Bob Cousy it's just, the 12th man in every team is just lining up to dunk on Bob Cousy. Like it just, that is like that's just like the growth of training in sports and
evolution.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, like you put, put the, today, the gold medal for the gymnastics in the 1950 Olympics. And like, there's a good video or GIF or something I've seen where it's like, this is what the guy in the pommel horse did to win the gold in the 1932 Olympics. And it's like, he hits the thing and he like puts his hands on the beam and flies over and he lands. And it's like, wow, great job. And then like, here's what the 13th placed finisher for the women's pommel horse in 2020 did. And it's like, they hit the thing and they bounce and then they do a triple somersault back and it's like, yeah, these are not the same sports, man. Like, and that's everything. My daughter is a competitive figure skater. So I have been watching a great deal of figure skating on the old Peacock app these days. And I remember when I was a kid, it was like, whoa, that guy just did a triple jump, it's like, they thought like your face was going to fly off your body if a car drove faster than 35 miles an hour back in the day. Like it was like a triple jump. I can't believe his legs don't fly off the bottom of his body. And now people are just landing quad jumps. And like, it just, that's just sort of the nature of things. So I don't know if that's a unpopular take as much as that is just sort of the nature of sports over time. And you kind of have to take that into account. And it's not really an apples to apples comparison. You kind of have to compare people to the, the competition at the time and who was greater as compared to the competition at the time as, compared to now. That's kind of because, I mean, sports science has come a long way just in the last 10 years and Rex Kern played 50 years ago. So it's not, it is very much not the same sport.
And that will take us eventually to a question about that in one of our later shows about when does modern football, like when is the current modern day football start? When did it start? Even look at like the dunk contests from like 1985 compared to today. It's like it's ridiculous. The creativity, the athleticism, it's insane.
Yeah. And so the next one from at 2007 MLR. Why doesn't Horseshoe have vendors that walk the aisle selling drinks and hot dogs feel like they can make a killing? Didn't they used to have people walking up and down the aisles with like lime green
cotton
shirts
candy
on? And yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, I'm up in the press box at times.
It has been quite a while since we have been attending Ohio State games in the seating area. But yeah, I guess that doesn't happen anymore. I don't know if that's a staffing thing or a food safety thing. Like you can't, but I mean, they do. We went to a Minnesota Twins game when we were at the up in Minnesota, and I feel like they probably had vendors going in the stands then. So
and again, like they've for the basketball games, they've gotten rid of all vending and all food and drink right now because of the pandemic. And maybe that's why it was this year as well. He just didn't want people walking up and down the aisles carrying COVID with them from one spot to another. But yeah, I mean, it is obviously, so it's a moneymaker, but yeah, I didn't even know, like when I saw that, I'm like, is that gone now? So I would expect it to be back when things are normal.
That would be my guess that was probably just a COVID thing. I do like the idea of carrying COVID with them, like just carrying a big cooler. COVID, get your COVID here. It's how life has worked in a lot of ways in the last year and a half or so, but that's neither here nor there. Next one from at CBusBox614. Mike Doss. What did he do better than almost anyone else? Tony, what is your answer? Because I feel like there's a couple possible answers here.
I think he hit people better than almost anybody else. He was an enforcer. He was an intimidator. He was, and we talked about this on the Morning Scoop a couple of days ago. He's a very clutch player, just an active defender. And when you needed something, he would generally get it for you and make that play. But I did not tell you this on the Morning Scoop episode when we talked about him, about how, back in the day, like I created, Tom, a GeoCities page about Mike Doss, like Mike Doss, Thorpe Award candidate, maybe 2001 at that point, because, obviously that heading into his junior season, maybe even heading into 2002, where it's like all of Mike Doss's accolades, and, he's just, he was tremendous. He was kind of almost a superhero at that point. And then just, obviously came back, announced after the 2001 season he was coming back, and the rest is history. But for me, just he hit dudes better than almost anyone.
Yeah, and another thing we talked about on that Morning Scoop show was just the timeliness of some interceptions. Like, he had a huge interception first drive of the 2001 Michigan game, returned it inside the 5. Jonathan Wells punched in a touchdown to take an early 7-0 lead, and that really kind of set the tone for that game. In the second quarter of the national championship game, he had a long interception return that set up Ohio State's first touchdown there. Just a couple, just really, really clutch, big time. Like, if Twitter was a thing back then, all of Ohio State Twitter is going, man, they really need a turnover right now. And it's like, boom, there it is. There's Mike Doss. And he has returned the ball inside the 5-yard line. And Ohio State went in a time when their offense was not great, was just handed a 3-yard drive for a touchdown. So that's a good thing. Now, GeoCities, were you a geocities.com/Coliseum person, since it was a sports site? Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Coliseum. And yeah,
I had 2 GeoCities sites. One was the Ohio State Michigan series history page, which was very detailed. And I also had one on the construction of the Blue Jackets' new arena. I went downtown, took the number 2 bus downtown with my little disposable camera, took pictures of the Ohio Penn site where the arena now stands. Took that to a pharmacy, had those developed, had those photo printouts scanned on my roommate's fancy dancy photo scanner, put those up on my site, moved the under construction blinking GIF down a little bit, and had Ohio Penn photos on my Blue Jackets site talking about, like, hey, it'll be pretty exciting. Blue Jackets hockey coming to Columbus. Well, I think it was just Columbus NHL hockey coming soon, because they didn't have a name yet. Can't wait. Bet they win the cup in the first 5, maybe 10 years at the most on the outside. So
and then of course you had yes, they did. You of course had the counter at the bottom of the page.
Well, otherwise it wasn't an official website. So
I also had a GeoCities page keeping we did college fantasy football league back then, and I had to do it all by hand. And so I also had a league website. After a couple of years, created a league hall of fame. Had pictures and stats and all sorts of stuff. Lee Suggs was a Hall of Famer.
Oh, I was going to say, was it players getting inducted, or was it
players? Yeah,
the Hall of Fame first ballot, Tony Gerdeman. Like, you aren't that great, but you do run the website, so you get to put in. No one else can change it. So
Antoine Randall L. It was kind of a cheat at one point. And there's some good times back then, and a lot of work on a Sunday, learning HTML and scouring Nevada box scores and whatnot. But certainly the joys of GeoCities, I don't think people appreciate.
The real hack there was the Netscape Navigator Gold Edition, which had a little bit of built-in page construction template stuff that really helped make it a little easier on the beginning HTMLer in the early days of the interwebs.
Also had an Angel Fire site and a Share site, which may have been the same thing, but whatever.
Were you on? Oh goodness, MySpace. Were you on MySpace? That's the real question. Yes.
Yeah. Nope.
All right, next one from @Carino_Jr. Time to talk about the shoe. It is 100 this year. We will end up definitely doing an episode of the Morning Scoop or Buckeye Weekly, or perhaps both. There's a long off season ahead. We probably have time for both. talking about the history of the Horseshoe this year. Yes, 100 years old, 100 years of Rose Bowl to start the year, and then 100th year in the Horseshoe this year. It is, I went back, golly, 4 years ago, and went to the Ohio State University archives and dug up some of the initial blueprints for the stadium, trying to figure out like the blue and yellow flowers that are in the north atrium. Like, why are those there? The short answer is that, there's that story that it was the result of a bet on the inaugural game. It was not, in fact, the result of a bet of the inaugural game. Those were in the initial plans years before that game happened. So no, it was not, whatever the story is about that, it is not true. So I may go back and do something more on that kind of thing, just dig through some old stuff and figure it out. And there was, now that we're just spending this entire show talking about 1998, there was a WOSU documentary in the late 90s about the construction of Ohio Stadium, and Howard Smith, was that the architect's name? That sounds right. Dwight Smith, Howard Smith. No, Dwight Smith was an outfielder for the Cubs. Probably yes. Howard Smith. But just, talking to his family and all sorts of stuff, and it's like the real Ken Burns style of documentary production, but a lot of slow push on photos and that type of thing. But it was, that was an interesting watch. You could probably dig that up. I'm going to guess on YouTube or the just WOSU website. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure that's around somewhere. If you want a deep dive on the construction of Ohio Stadium, that was a pretty good documentary. I'm also just now thinking back to the fact that they did the big reconstruction of Ohio Stadium while I was a student at Ohio State, and that now is 21 years. This will be the 22nd year that they've played in the updated Ohio Stadium, and yet again, I feel like I'm about to turn dust. So that's good.
Yeah, like when did South Stands become permanent?
That was 2000. That was 2000. The first game was the Fresno State game where they had that was the first game in the new stadium, and it was also the first game where they had 3 pick sixes or something like that. There was something else remarkable in that game. Like David Mitchell had a pick six, and I think they had 2 pick sixes or something like that. But
you have 100-yarder,
maybe. There was something else remarkable about that, other than the fact that it was the first game in the new stadium and the first game I actually got to cover as a Lantern reporter covering the Ohio State football team.
And I don't know if it was. I don't think it's the current scoreboard. I think it's the one before that cost more than the stadium did at the time, because the stadium cost like 1.2 million to build or whatever, and then the scoreboard that they put up, I don't know, in the 90s or whatever, cost more than that. So there's all kinds of, and the photographs are incredible of like the beginning of the construction and seeing campus just completely farmland, basically. And it's like, let's put a stadium here. And then you got people showing up to games in the horse and carriage, and you got the horses all gathered around in the yards, and very cool stuff. I don't know how we portray that on the podcast, but I'm
looking at the box score from that Fresno State game, and boy howdy was this a football game.
Is that Trent Dilfer?
No, that was David Carr, I believe. Wasn't it David Carr? David Carr, yes. So here's the scoring of that game. Mike Doss, fumble recovery in the end zone for a touchdown. David Mitchell, fumble recovery, 34-yard for a touchdown. Chad Cascio, 23-yard pass from Steve Belisari. Chad Cascio, currently a dentist in Upper Arlington. When I lived in Upper Arlington, Chad Cascio was my dentist. Reggie Germany did my taxes. 51-yard interception return, David Mitchell. And then a field goal, 25-yard interception return, Matt Wilhelm. So they had 4 defensive touchdowns. So they had 1 offensive touchdown and 4 defensive touchdowns until literally the last play of the game. Fresno State scored on a 9-yard touchdown pass with 5 seconds left in the game. Then that apparently ticked off John Cooper, because after the Ohio State recovered the onside kick, Scott McMullen threw a 44-yard touchdown pass to Ricky Bryant on the final play of the game to make it 43-10. So yes, that was a game where Ohio State had 2 touchdowns. They scored 4 defensive touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in which they did not successfully kick a PAT after the touchdown. Dan Stoltz missed one on the first kick, and they didn't kick one on the last play of the game. 14 points in the last 5 seconds of the game. Like, man, that was a banger. It was
what was the time of possession? What was the time of possession on that one?
That's quite a yeah, and always the first thing I'm looking for. So let me see.
With like losing 4 possessions, basically.
You ready? What would be the funniest possible time of possession in this game?
I'm thinking like 35 minutes for Fresno State, based on Ohio State never having the ball.
Fresno State, 30 minutes and 0 seconds. Ohio State, 30 minutes and 0 seconds.
Even matchup.
Yes. Ohio State ran the ball. Ohio State ran 70 plays. How did Ohio State run 70 plays in this game?
Ohio 3 and outs from Fresno.
Ohio State ran the ball 50 times. Here's you want to talk about modern football and how the game has changed. Ohio State, let's just take out that 44-yard touchdown on the last play of the game. Before that, Ohio State 10 for 19 for 122 yards and a touchdown through the air. Pretty much that's like a drive for CJ Stroud these days. So
that was 2000.
That was 2000. Yes,
and that's like 6 years after what I consider like modern football began. But that doesn't sound so modern. But 2011 wasn't very modern either with Braxton Miller. Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, the game that Ohio State won with one completed pass. Yes,
very very Woody Hazy in there. That is that going to do it for us, Tom? Are we?
Unless we want to reminisce more about the 2000 season, I think we can successfully wrap this one up. And man, we have the listeners have been generous with their questions this week, so we might be able to squeeze two. We've got at least 2 more shows, at least 2 more listener question shows out of this. Like, and boy, if you guys like podcasts and you guys like hearing us talk and or watching us talk, keep sending questions, because man, this is as long as you guys have stuff you want to know about, and sometimes stuff you don't want to know about, such as our GeoCity sites from the late 90s. Like, boy, have you come to the right place.
Other podcasts will get a bunch of questions and just pick certain ones. No.
We value all of our listeners. So Therefore, we're going to answer all of your questions.
And if some of those questions are about vegan meats or whatever else, yeah, I mean,
vegan meats, the 1997 Ohio State Michigan game, and other disgusting topics.
Perfect. So well said, Tom. Let's let that be the end of today's show. Want to thank you all for joining us as always. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, hit that YouTube subscription button there. Rate us and review us on iTunes, or even now Spotify on your phone. If you like, whatever application you use, if you can rate us, please do so. Again, tell your neighbors. Do something good for the neighborhood. Let them know that we're here. That will then do it. Thank you all for joining us, and we will talk to you guys later.